Ernesto Guevara de la Serna was born on June 14, 1928, in Rosario, Argentina, into a middle-class family that valued education, debate, and books. From an early age, Ernesto struggled with severe asthma. The illness often confined him indoors, gasping for breath, while other children ran freely outside. Yet this weakness shaped his strength. Long hours alone pushed him toward reading, reflection, and discipline. He read poetry, philosophy, history, and political theory, slowly forming a sharp and questioning mind. As a teenager, Ernesto showed little interest in comfort or status. He admired courage, endurance, and honesty. His asthma never disappeared, but he refused to let it define him. Instead, he trained his body through sports and long-distance cycling, pushing himself far beyond what others thought possible. This constant battle between limitation and willpower would later define his life. In his early 20s, Ernesto studied medicine at the University of Buenos Aires, but it was not the classroom that transformed him, it was the road. In 1951, he and his friend Alberto Granado set off on a motorcycle journey across South America. The trip, later recorded in Ernesto's diaries, changed him forever. He witnessed extreme poverty, exploitation of indigenous communities, and workers living without dignity or protection. In Chile, Peru, and Colombia, he saw the same pattern repeated, wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, while millions lived without access to health care or basic rights. At a leper colony in Peru, Ernesto chose to live among the patients rather than apart from them. He treated them as equals, shaking their hands and sharing meals, ignoring the fear others had. It was there that his identity began to shift. He stopped seeing suffering as individual misfortune and started viewing it as a systemic problem, one caused by political and economic structures. By the time Ernesto returned to Argentina, he was no longer just a medical student. He was becoming a revolutionary thinker. In 1954, while in Guatemala, Ernesto witnessed the overthrow of a democratically elected government backed by foreign economic interests. This event convinced him that peaceful reform alone could not protect nations from powerful external forces. Around this time, he began signing his letters as Che, an Argentine expression he used frequently. The nickname stayed, and Ernesto Guevara slowly faded into history. His life changed completely in 1955 in Mexico when he met Fidel Castro. Castro was planning to overthrow the dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista in Cuba. Che joined the movement not as a leader, but as a doctor. However, during guerrilla training and combat, his discipline, courage, and strategic thinking became impossible to ignore. Despite constant asthma attacks, he fought alongside other revolutionaries in the jungles of Cuba's Sierra Maestra Mountains. The struggle was brutal. Many fighters died, supplies were scarce, and defeat always seemed close. Yet Che gained a reputation for strict discipline and absolute commitment. He believed deeply in sacrifice and demanded the same from others. In 1959, after years of fighting, Batista fled Cuba. The revolution had succeeded. Che Guevara became an international figure overnight. Photographs of his face, serious, intense, eyes fixed on a distant horizon, began circulating around the world. In Cuba, he took on major roles: head of the National Bank, Minister of Industry, and diplomat. He traveled to Africa, Asia, and the Soviet Union, representing Cuba and promoting revolutionary movements, but Che was uncomfortable with power. He disliked bureaucracy and material comfort. While others enjoyed their new status, Che lived simply and continued working long hours. He believed the revolution should not stop in Cuba. In his view, injustice was global, and so must be resistance. This belief led him to leave Cuba in secret. He traveled first to Africa, attempting to support revolutionary forces in the Congo. The mission failed. Cultural differences, lack of unity, and poor organization made success impossible. Che later admitted this was one of his greatest disappointments. Still, he refused to give up. In 1966, he went to Bolivia to ignite another revolution. But the world had changed. Local support was weak, communication failed, and the Bolivian army, assisted by foreign intelligence, slowly closed in. Che's group became isolated, hungry, and exhausted. On October 8, 1967, Che Guevara was captured. The next day, he was executed. He was 39 years old. News of his death spread rapidly. Some celebrated it. Others mourned. But almost immediately, Che became something more than a man. He became a symbol. To many, he represented resistance against oppression, courage, and idealism. To others, he represented violence, rigidity, and failed ideology. His image appeared on posters, flags, shirts, and murals across the world. Often disconnected from the complex reality of his life, Che Guevara remains one of the most debated figures of the 20th century. He was not perfect, nor was he purely evil or purely heroic. He was a human being driven by absolute conviction, willing to sacrifice everything including his life for his beliefs. His story forces difficult questions. Can noble goals justify harsh methods? Is revolution a path to justice or a cycle of suffering? And what happens when ideals collide with reality? Che never saw the world he imagined. But the fire he carried, restless, demanding, and uncompromising, continues to provoke discussion, admiration, and criticism. Perhaps that is his true legacy, not answers, but questions that refuse to disappear. And so, the story of Che Guevara does not end in Bolivia. It continues wherever people argue about freedom, power, and the price of change.